The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Starting with the trade for Deebo Samuel.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Washington Commanders are trading for San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel. Of course, this team connected to that potential move ever since it was discovered that the 49ers were interested and were publicly acknowledging that they were interested in moving the veteran wide receiver. And before we get into all the things that are Deebo specific, what we got to do is look at the big picture here. The Washington Commanders in 2024, above all expectations, predicted to win about 7 games in the 2024 season. First year with GM Adam Peters, head coach Dan Quinn, rookie quarterback Jayden Daniels, beat the brakes off of that expectation, won 12 regular season games, end up in the playoffs, win not 1 but 2 playoff games in the NFC playoff picture, end up in the NFC championship game, 60 minutes from the Super Bowl. So you could say it's successfully in 1 year's time unlocked their Super Bowl championship window. However, the question coming into this offseason would be, what kind of moves would Adam Peters make? How would Adam Peters address this offseason, approach this offseason to do things to open that window, start getting it even just a little bit of a crack open so you can look at this team and say they have a legitimate chance to not only repeat the success they had in 2024, but go even a little bit further. This trade for Deebo Samuel starts to open that window for the Washington Commanders, I believe. And we'll get into all the details of why I believe that here coming up in the episode. But the next thing I want to talk about, and I think I want to approach, is you, Commanders fans, the people who are here because you're a diehard fan, you bleed burgundy and gold, you call the team whatever team name feels most comfortable for you, and hopefully you're not out there arguing with everybody, because at the end of the day, guys, we all want the same thing. We all want this Washington football team winning football games. Every single trade this offseason has been tied to the Washington Commanders. Deebo Samuel, most recently Brandon Ayuk, San Francisco 49ers wide receiver, that a lot of people in Washington talked about last offseason, preseason, as he was having his contract dispute with the 49ers. Potentially there's a trade here for the Washington Commanders. Great friends with Jayden Daniels. Adam Peters knows him. But now all these other trades as well. Myles Garrett, no connection to Adam Peters. No best friends on the Washington Commanders roster. It's not about that. It's about the legacy of the team. It's about the elevation of the team. When these key blue chip players, marquee names in the NFL scene, go out there, start looking for new homes, what does everybody do on the national media, local media side? They start tying them to other teams. But guess what? When it's a team, or when it's a guy that wants to go chase a Super Bowl championship opportunity, or a guy who's looked at as a guy who could help get a team over the hump, they don't look at them and say, hey, maybe he can go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Maybe he can go to the Tennessee Titans. Maybe he can go to, sorry, Ross Jackson, the New Orleans Saints. No, they say, what teams are on the cusp of winning championships that this guy could go make a great impact on? The Washington Commanders were, just as of even last offseason, one of the teams that we just mentioned before in that group. Right now, they're now officially a team that is in that upper echelon group. When you talk about blue chip players like Deebo Samuel that can make big impacts on NFL teams, who are the teams, what teams are out there that could be a Deebo Samuel away from reaching the ultimate goal in the National Football League? That is the state of the Washington Commanders this offseason. We've seen it all across the board. But now that this trade has actually been executed, you have a firm piece of solid evidence that you can grip to when you're talking to your fellow fans or even your rival fans who might be friends or family out there. So Washington Commanders fans, round of applause to you, because you've been here through so much, all the ups and downs, all the drama, all the turmoil. So enjoy the moment. Even if you weren't necessarily on top and on board with the Deebo Samuel trade, we will get to some of those concerns here in just a little bit. Even if you're one of the fans that wasn't necessarily sold into the Deebo Samuel trade, I want you to look at it just from the lens of your team. Your favorite team is now a team that across the National Football League, when you're talking about players that can make an impact for a championship caliber team, when you're talking about players that want to go hunt championships, the Washington Commanders are a team in that conversation. Of course, that is the biggest takeaway for me, is that the Washington Commanders, one, they're now that destination for free agents, for trade targets, all of it alike. Two, they now have the capacity to actually do it. And three, it makes sense. And all those three things combined means that you have a much larger chance of repeating 2024 success, extending it into the 2025 playoffs, potentially competing against teams like the Philadelphia Eagles. How do we get to that point? Well, that is where we got to dive deeper into Deebo Samuel. Who is Deebo Samuel? What is he going to bring to this team? How does his impact with quarterback Jayden Daniels further expand his impact? And then, of course, we are going to talk about the concerns that some Commanders fans, including our insiders, have been voicing to me ever since the Deebo Samuel trade started becoming a rumor. And, of course, the Commanders were tied to it. And, of course, it's all leading into our Mock Draft Monday episode coming to start next week, a Deebo Samuel impacted Mock Draft Monday. So we got a whole lot of things to cover here over the next few days as we react to this news. Deebo Samuel coming to the Washington Commanders, reported compensation unconfirmed at this time, 5th round pick. So you're getting a day 3 pick. And yes, the Washington Commanders are taking on all of the contract salary left and the bonuses left on the Deebo Samuel contract. Again, that is reported, so far unconfirmed, but reported by reliable sources.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. Tonight's NBA slate includes 2 embattled franchises just trying to pick up the pieces after the trade deadline. The Kings and the Mavs face off. The Mavs, slight favorites, laying 1.5, according to FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
He's back. Matthew Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams are in agreement on a restructured contract.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast.
Let's get right into it. After weeks of wild speculation, you had Giants receivers tweeting Rams emojis at number 9. You had a wild rumor that Tom Brady was raising up Matthew Stafford in Montana, taking him on a ski trip to recruit him to the Raiders. Well,
after a Starbucks fight.
Yeah, exactly. It was crazy. You had insiders fighting at a Starbucks in Indianapolis over it, Travis. It was insane. After all of that, Matthew Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams are in agreement on a new deal, a restructured deal that will have him back with this Rams organization. He was not going to be playing on the current contract. They had to get a new deal done. They gave his agent permission to communicate and negotiate with other teams to test his value out. And look, yes, Matthew Stafford should not have a worse contract than Kirk Cousins or Jared Goff or guys like that. They saw there was more money out there for him, but at the end of the day, by all accounts, he took less money to get back to this comfortable situation where they were 14 yards away from hosting an NFC Championship game at home with a chance to get it to a Super Bowl. So the Rams are running it back with Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, D-Mac, I think this is a great example of sometimes the thing that makes the most sense is the thing that makes the most sense. And I've been saying this from the beginning. And you heard me say this, the everydayers that have heard me say this, that, a year ago, I'm like, guys, this is stupid. He's coming back. Don't sweat this at all. And this year I think he's coming back, but you might want to sweat the Raiders a little bit. And the Raiders felt like maybe a possibility, but I kept kind of reminding myself. I was on with Patricia Traina the other day on Locked On Giants. And I said to her, I said, look, Matthew Stafford, from the moment he's come into this league, has been a great teammate and an incredible competitor. You're telling me that after 15 plus years in this league, that at the very last minute, he's going to go chase a few extra bucks? Like, it just didn't make any sense. He wants to win. The Rams give him the best chance to win. The Rams don't have a better option without him. That in the history of the NFL, the person who has made the most money in NFL salary ever is Aaron Rodgers. Number 2 is Matthew Stafford. You're telling me that he's going to leave over a few extra $1 million somewhere else to go be on a garbage Giants team, to go be on a bad Raiders team? It didn't make a ton of sense. Now, egos make people do weird things. Hurt feelings make people do weird things. But the Rams clearly wanted him back. He clearly wanted to be told, that we love you and you're pretty and we know that you're a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence and Tua Tagovailoa, which he is. I don't know if he'll get to that dollar amount. We're still waiting to hear exactly what the details of the contract are. But he got what he wanted. He gets to stay in the place that wants to have him. He gets to play for fans that are thrilled that he's a made guy for, and he gets a chance to continue to win and compete. It's a win-win for both the team and the player.
Yeah, I love that you point that out, because when we do get details of this contract, whether it be a one-year deal where there was some talk that it's year-to-year or it's a multi-year deal, whatever it is, it should read as a headline, Matthew Stafford takes less money to go back with the Rams, and he turned down bigger offers from the Giants and from the Raiders. Both interesting situations. You have Tom Brady, you have Pete Carroll, you have Chip Kelly, you have an indoor stadium, $100 million in cap space with the Raiders. At the end of the day, if his number one priority is chasing another Super Bowl championship and hoist the other Lombardi trophy before he hangs them up, it's with Sean McVay. It's with an organization that he knows gives him the best chance to win. I never believed the Giant stuff for once. Maybe that's a little just a leverage play for him, just to get multiple teams involved to try to help him get his contract where he wants it to be. And as you point out, look, this is someone who's made a ton of money, but he's also mentioned wanting to win a gold jacket. And the thing about Matthew Stafford, and I see this out there, look, there's only, listen to everyone out there. It means something to me that Tom Brady went to the extent that he did to try to get him to the Raiders.
No doubt.
Said, I want Matthew Stafford in this rebuilding Raiders team that has had no success. Maybe Stafford can change our franchise's fortunes. You hear coaches, you hear everyone out there. Pretty much the only person that doesn't think Matthew Stafford is elite is Madden, based on how they rate him every single summer. Outside of that, he's got that reputation. And you look at his numbers since he signed with the Rams. I mean, 8th in QBR, 10th in passing touchdowns, 9th in yards per attempt, but it's playoff wins, tied for 3rd in passer rating. Outside of Josh Allen, he's 2nd in the sport. He's played in 7 playoff games for the Rams, has been better than the other quarterback in essentially all of those games, and that's what matters most. It's about competing for championships, and I think that's what both sides realized at the end of the day, and they got to the dollar amount that made sense for both sides.
Yeah, bingo. This was I want to win. This gives me the best chance to win. I want to continue to build my Hall of Fame resume, which, by the way, I think he has already completed. And I think once you've kind of checked that box, I don't think you can play your way out of it. I think once you're in, you're kind of in, and I believe that he is. But he wanted to, and I don't want to try to speculate too much here, but I think this is one of those things that, you want to go on a couple of recruiting trips. You want someone else to tell you how pretty you are. You want someone else to tell you how important you are as well. The same person's telling you this, but they're also kind of trying to, do it. I don't want to say on the cheap, but they're trying to do it as inexpensively as possible so they have money to spend other places, et cetera, et cetera. To have somebody like Tom Brady whisper in your ear that you're my guy has got to feel pretty good. To have somebody like the New York Giants say, look, we'll give you the 50+ million that was reportedly on the table. That's got to feel pretty good. The man is a competitor. The man is about winning football. Let's run it back a little bit. Why is he not in Detroit anymore? There's only one reason. They couldn't win. Like, he was there for 10 years, doing everything he can, playing hurt, doing everything possible. And he gave them 10 years to try to get it figured out, and they couldn't do it. And then he finally went and said, look, man, you got to send me somewhere else. I can't win here. You guys can't get it right. And the second he got a place where it worked, we see what it looks like. So that's what he's about. We're all human beings. We all like to be, compensated fairly. We all look across the aisle and see somebody, sorry, Tua, sorry, Trevor Lawrence. And you're like, that guy sucks compared to me. Why am I making, 60% of what he makes? That's a human reaction. And I understand why he would want to be made whole like that. But at the end of this entire speculation, these last weeks of trying to figure it out, I think the overriding factor is this was the best place for him, and the Rams wanted him back, and they finally figured out a way to make both of those things happen.
Yeah, I think this only kind of strengthens the relationship between Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, Les Snead, and it proves that they're truly in lockstep moving forward. The fact that Matthew Stafford did get to see what it's like with another organization, have them woo him, because I'm sure that when he's listening to pitches from the Raiders and the Giants and he's seeing the skeleton of a contract and how that looks, in the back of his mind, he's probably thinking about what the Rams do and how first class of an organization they are. It's almost like, hey, if you're with a girl and she says she wants to have a break and you're like, what does that even mean? You could like date other people during this break and something. And then if you really kind of, know she'll be coming back or whatever, you feel good about it. I think that's what the Rams were. I think they were so confident in their situation that they said, hey, go out there, explore, see what it's like, see what your value's like. And then when you come home, you're going to feel even better about your decision because you know what you have. And I think, too, the interesting thing about all this to me is last decade plus, I mean, dating even further back, I mean, kind of the old adage was like, okay, draft that quarterback, hit on that quarterback, have him on that rookie contract, and then you throw the money at the edge rusher, the cornerback, the big receiver, and then you compete for a Super Bowl title. The Rams drafting so well, I think, is the biggest reason why they're willing to give him that raise, give him that guaranteed money, because they said, okay, we'll give it to Matthew Stafford. He's won a Super Bowl for us. We don't have to spend $30 million on an edge rusher because we drafted Jared Verse. We don't have to spend $25 million on a Aaron Donald replacement because we found Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk and Byron Young and all these guys they found. Puka Nacua is your fourth pick in the fifth round. By the way, Puka Nacua reacted to this, and he was in Utah, or he was going to Salt Lake City and missed his flight. So he missed his flight at LAX posted. So I think that's the beautiful thing is, look, they stayed together for the kids, as you would say. Now the kids are this foundation, and now it's all about hitting on free agency, right? And kind of the biggest, Travis, the thing that I like, I think both of you and I we both felt like there was a really good chance that this deal would ultimately get done at the end of the day. And one thing that crossed my mind, all this was when Matthew Stafford is at that negotiating table, I'm sure it's about the money, but I was thinking, hey, it's about the crack ribs, 4 crack ribs that he played with, right? It's about the weapons around him. Where the conversations about, okay, where's the cap space going to? Are we going to add another weapon alongside Puka Nacua? Are we going to draft a tight end? What are we going to do to improve this offense and put more talent so we can truly go after another Super Bowl?
The only thing I would add to that, Doug, is that it's about the head coach too. And look, I'm a Pete Carroll fan. I think Pete Carroll's really good at what he does. I loved him at SC. I know you're as a Bruin, you can't really say that out loud. I understand, but yeah, but he knows what he's doing, and that's why the Raider thing was a little bit. But Sean McVay is in a very small group of guys that you might find somebody that's as good, but you're not finding somebody better. And somebody that you speak the same language. I've heard them talk about, they can challenge each other. They look at football in a similar way, and they can go about this and trust one another. I think that's a huge part of it. That could Matthew Stafford drop into any of the other 31 teams and figure it out? Sure, he could. He's really smart. He's been in the league a long time, and he's just one of those guys that's going to process really, really quickly. But wouldn't it be better not to have to do that? Wouldn't it be better to just continue to do what what works? And the Rams, look, they've had a weird couple of years where they kind of snuck, I don't want to say snuck into the playoffs, but they didn't really lock it down until late in the season, and they got hot at exactly the right time. Most of that is a direct line back to the quarterback playing at the level that he has, and to run it back made all the sense in the world, and they're going to do it. And it's great news for Rams fans.
Yeah, look, there's this talk about picks, and could you get a conditional first-round pick? You get a 2026 first-round pick, a second, a fifth, things like that as far as a compensation package. Look, we played Fisher ball for a long time. We saw what that looked like, right? I mean, you didn't hit on a lot of those picks. So, I mean, you just don't want to trust that. And, yes, I'm to the point where the Rams have killed it so much in the draft in recent years. I'm almost like, okay, man, it's got to even out at some point. Right. I mean, with the way they hit, I mean, I'm hoping that I'm wrong. Right. But I mean, they've killed it so much in the draft that I'm going proven quantities.
Yeah, look, and not only have they've killed it kind of across the draft spectrum. I know that they finally had their first round pick since Jared Goff and Jared Verse. Well, it looks like they drafted an all-pro. They got the rookie of the year, and it feels like he's going to be an all-pro level player for a number of seasons. Braden Fisk in the second round. They've gotten starters in Puka and Limmer, much later in the draft. We saw guys like Cam Kitchens, who made an impact on this team. And then, they've missed on a couple. The Jonah Jackson thing was a miss. I would argue that the Tutu Atwell, considering where he was drafted, was a miss. The offensive Logan Bruss was a miss. So, nobody, like you said, nobody's going to get them all right. But if you get more right than you get wrong, you're in a pretty good spot. And they're getting a lot more right than they get wrong. So it does allow you to spend a little money on your quarterback, an aging quarterback. But, Old athletes are always a little bit of a risk, but I feel pretty good about this one. It doesn't feel like, he relies on a ton of athleticism. It's more on experience and knowledge and being able to process really quickly and that big right arm. And I certainly didn't see a ton of drop off in that.
Yeah, and who's punching air right now is Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers looked like he was just waiting for the Raiders to trade for him, and then he could fall into this situation. And look, Aaron Rodgers, we've talked about on this show a couple of different times. It's not a terrible quarterback. It's not the elite MVP Aaron Rodgers anymore. I mean, I think he could have given this team a chance to win. They'd be interesting. They'd be fun. But there's no way that a 4 years older Aaron Rodgers is better than the current version of Matthew Stafford. I think there's a world where that's the case.
I wouldn't be surprised if Rodgers ended up in Vegas. I think that's at least a possibility. But no, look, the Rams. Maybe you could talk yourself into Aaron Rodgers is going to be on his best behavior, et cetera, that Jimmy G's been in the system, that Sam Darnold might have been the right. They're not getting a better player than Matthew Stafford. There just was not a better player available. This is why those other teams wanted him. This is why all the other dominoes in the quarterback, universe will start to fall now, because everybody was waiting to see where the best guy on the market was going to go, and that was number 9.
That is 5 straight for your Michigan State basketball Spartans.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Michigan State wins their 5th straight game, all against teams that are either in the top 25 or, hey, the only team that wasn't that they've beaten in the streak. Well, they were underdogs by about 6 or 7 points. And, started that game down 16 points. But with this team, it just doesn't matter. And, hey, who's that over there? That's Justin Sand of 24/7 Sports. Justin, how are you doing on this Sunday, my good friend?
Matt, there's what can be complained about. We got an Xavier Booker 3. We got a Cohen Carr alley-oop, and then probably like another one, and then another one. Multiple Carson Cooper alley-oops. Hard to be disappointed on a day like this. Weather is great. And Michigan State holds the first place ranking in the Big Ten once again after another game.
Just another one of these games, where it's Michigan State, just great defense, holding Wisconsin, one of the league's and nation's best offenses, just 62 points. They held John Tanji to irrelevant status. That's not to call him overrated. He is a very good player, but when Jayden Akins is on you tighter than your own compression shorts, what are you going to do? We've seen that happen with other players around the conference, and just to go along with the theme of the season, oh my God, sorry, it's getting a little boring over here. Justin, Michigan State out-rebounds another team, 51-40 this time. Jackson Kohler, okay, yeah, whatever, just 16 rebounds, 7 of them offensive. It was truly just what they've been doing all season long, getting contributions from all around the court. This is a special team. Stop me if I'm getting way ahead of my skis, but look, we're less than a half hour removed from this great win. How could anyone be stopped thinking this? Feels like 2019, doesn't it? Like, team hit a kind of a snag in the middle of the season. You have some doubts, and then, well, oh boy, this is going to be a tough last 7 games of the season here. Well, they just go ahead and just win them all, and someone emerges as a top dog like Cassius Winston did. You got that right here in Jace Richardson, and even for his standards, just an okay game. But, man, it's a special team. I know I'm stating the obvious now, but there is a specialness in the air in East Lansing, Justin.
Yeah, Matt, it's one of those teams where it's like you go into every single game not only feeling very confident about the fact that, like, no matter who's on the court, they're going to give it their all. And whichever guys aren't having a good game, enough guys will come out to offset it. And we saw that once again today. First half, we saw Jayden Akins kind of go nuclear, probably his best offensive stretch in a while. At the same time, when Trey Holloman had to step up and kind of give heavy minutes when Jace Richardson went out, he necessarily wasn't looking great. And yeah, down 2 at the half. And these are the things that make a great team. These are the teams that give the team the depth and kind of the moments of kind of resilience that they need throughout the year. They're winning in different ways. They're winning kind of with different formulas almost every single game, but then the core principles are still the same. They're going to try to out-rebound you. They're going to defend like crazy, and they're going to make sure that you're going to be running the entire game. And we kind of saw Wisconsin's bigs at the end there kind of become a little bit of a non-factor even offensively just because of how Kohler was working them on both ends throughout the game. And yeah, it's I see on the side that we're going to talk about like who gets the MVP for this game, and it's a tough one because if you kind of just look at different stretches of the game, like Akins had that stretch that kept Michigan State in it, but then he kind of really didn't do much for the rest of the game after that. Jace had a great second half, not just scoring wise, but in a lot of the intangible metrics too, and jumping in passing lanes, and he had 5 or 6 rebounds too, and but didn't do much in the first half. So like everyone contributed like bits and pieces throughout the game, and that kind of makes this team what it is.
It's beautiful. And of course, we are going to try to debate who the MVP is or our top 5 guys from this game. I don't know how the conversation is going to go, quite frankly, but really quick, I guess egg on my face for being dead wrong in the preview show with Locked On Badgers. Our guy Ryan Herring's over there. We both said, with some stats attached to it, with how good Wisconsin is offensively, how solid Michigan State is too, that this is going to be a game where it's the first team to the upper 70s, really. Like this isn't going to be your old school MSU versus Wisconsin. First team to 60 wins this game. Like, no, of course that's what it boiled down to. Justin, I mean, this was always going to be a rock fight. That's just in the DNA of Wisconsin versus Michigan State basketball. Wisconsin, they were ice cold from three-point land. They got 32 attempts off, just made 5 of them. John Tanji, 1 of 8 from behind the arc. Man, I thought it was fascinating, too, because Michigan State, they were not hedging on the ball screens like I thought they were going to. Yeah. They went under on a lot of screens, and I'm thinking, like, this is a good Wisconsin team. I don't know how sustainable that's going to be, but sure enough, leave it to the mastermind that is that coaching staff and Tom Izzo to put the faith in the defense's hands there that everything is going to be okay. So I just had to make a mention to, once again, collectively the group effort on defense over the whole game. And we also got to point this out, too, because this has been the favorite trend, putting the clamps down late in the game. You've all seen the stats, no shots made for Michigan in the last 4 minutes, none for Purdue in the last 5 or whatever it was. Illinois, they went the last hour and a half in their own gym not scoring. This one, just 2 field goals in the last 4 minutes against Wisconsin, and one of those was a layup very late in the game. So when it's closing time, go ahead and board those windows up because ain't no one getting inside. It's amazing.
Yeah, it almost is kind of like the opposite of last year's team. Well, and pretty much every single way it's the opposite of last year's team, but especially this run where like you'll watch a game in the second half where last year Michigan State would make one of those signature vanity comebacks of like they trim it from like down 11 to like down 3. And then the final 4 minutes, the other team would go on that scoring run that this year the other teams are not going on. And it's kind of the opposite of we saw the stats and you just touched on them there. Like the last like 4 or 5 minutes of like 3 of the last big wins have kind of gone in that way of just the water's been completely shut off. And it's every single position. It's every single guy. Like I know like Jayden Akins is probably like in that defensive player of the year category for the Big Ten, but like all of these guys, like even, like Jace Richardson, like obviously he like the reason that he's flying up the draft boards isn't because of the defense, but his hands are active as anyone, and he's fighting through every single screen. And Kohler's back there, like obviously like the measurables aren't there, but he makes up for that with his motor like 10 times over. Carson Cooper, like say what you will about maybe not having the best offensive touch, but that guy's defending like crazy and then running as hard as he can to go get the oop. Like every single guy on this team is fully bought in. And we can debate like the roster construction of like, oh, like what, like if Michigan State loses in the Final Four, but not the national title game, somebody on Twitter is going to be like, oh, you know what? They would have won those extra 2 games and they would have won the national title if they would have gone and gotten like, I don't know, a Terrace Reed or something. There's always going to be like, unless they win the national title, someone's like, oh, they need to get maybe like a little bit better at center than they got last year. And those points could be valid. But the way that every single person on this team is bought in and everyone has the most low maintenance, low ego kind of approach to every facet of the game of basketball, I think it's like the greatest formula in basketball right now. And they don't have a Janai Broom. They don't have a Mark Sears. But like, man, like this team is constructed in the way where everyone is going to give you everything they have for every single minute of every single game.
Down 11 in the first half, and you're sitting there as a Michigan State fan probably thinking, I don't want to speak for everyone here, but this is what's going through my head. Like, all right, we've seen it. We've seen this before, double-digit deficit. in the first half. Like, how are they going to do it this time? Because we know they're going to find a way. Again, They did it at Illinois. Michigan, I don't think it ever got to double digits. If it did, I apologize, but I think it was like 9-ish points, whatever, in the first half. But still, they stomached whatever it was, an 18-0 run by the Wolverines that game. I mean, Purdue was up 8 on them early on in the game. It's like, yeah, they got mental fortitude. And that's not to say like, oh, teams in the past are just mentally weak and soft. I'm just saying like this one is really headstrong. Like they have bought in completely.
Yeah, the game starts, Matt, once they're down like 9 in the first half. That's when the game
It's almost like comforting to them. Yeah, that's right. It's
that Xavier Booker 3 to stop a 3-minute scoring drought. That's when the game officially begins for the 2024-25 Spartans.
That is the free space on the bingo card the last, 2-3 weeks is MSU down a dozen. Booker finding nothing but the nylon here.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. Tonight's NBA slate includes 2 embattled franchises just trying to pick up the pieces after the trade deadline. The Kings and the Mavs face off. The Mavs, slight favorites, laying 1.5 according to FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
You are Locked On Balls, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Big time win. The game-winning shot at the buzzer from who? Who was it? Jemai Meshack. How about that? You gotta love sports. You literally have just got to love the way things work out sometimes. A monumental win for so many different reasons. We talked about it with Grant Ramey on Friday's show for several of them. We're going to go through here the next 15 minutes or so and just kind of get some raw reaction, right? I mean, as you can see, I'm doing my postcast here. I'm on the road. I'm in a hotel room. I'm in Houston, Texas. I'm watching Tennessee baseball work through the Astros Foundation Classic, the College Classic this weekend. Got back to, I started listening and watching on the way back to the hotel. And then it was one of those when I got back to the room, I planned on, changing clothes, going to grab a bite to eat or whatever, but I couldn't stop. I was gonna be keeping track of the game on my phone no matter what, but this wasn't worthy of a let's watch YouTube TV on my phone while I'm going and trying to find some grub or a drink or something. I've got to sit here at the TV and I can't leave, right? And that's what's awesome about college basketball sometimes, and really college sports in general, but especially this game. I mean, you had Alabama that really felt like it took control of things with about 2 minutes left in the ball game and just kind of wouldn't relinquish it for a little bit, and Tennessee went ice cold from the field there towards the end. But the iconic game-winning three-pointer, again, from Jemai Meshack, as both Rick Barnes and Zakiya Ziegler were trying to call timeouts. They were trying to call timeout. Thank God they did not get that timeout granted, right? But even without that iconic Jemai Meshack three-pointer, it would not have happened if he hadn't rebounded and missed Chaz Lanier free throw attempt with 30 seconds left, drawn the foul, and then sank both of his free throws to tie the game at 76. I mean, he just manhandled his dude. He whooped that tail. Got that rebound, and he got fouled, goes to the other end of the court, okay, and sinks both of those humongous free throws to tie it at 76 all. It also wouldn't have happened if Tennessee hadn't forced Alabama into a 5-second violation there after a very, very questionable jump ball call. Very questionable jump ball call there. So Alabama's going to get the last shot, right? Alabama's going to get an opportunity to win. They've got their inbounding it underneath its own baskets. They can go over there and draw up a play, see what happens. Tennessee does some different subs. They get Cade Phillips down there, and he's the one jumping and guarding the inbounder. And there's a 5-second violation. And that was at 3.8 seconds left in this basketball game. Tennessee found a way to do it. How did it sound? Courtesy of the Vol Radio Network. You guys know it. We have written permission and verbal permission to play this on the podcast. This is Bob Kessling, Burt Bertelkamp on the Vol Radio Network, how Tennessee won it over Alabama. Bob Kessling, Burt Bertelkamp, Vol Radio Network is how you heard it around your Vol country listening stations. However you want to fry, I don't know. I'm scatterbrained right now, guys. I'm in a hotel room doing a podcast. You guys know me. I'm such a structure guy. I hate doing shows on the road because I don't have my proper equipment and the things in my ears that don't sound right. But man, I mean, just this is what it's all about, right? I mean, your raw reaction. Where were you when Jemai Mashek sank that 3 to beat Alabama and potentially lock up a number 1 overall seed for the NCAA tournament? Yes, Tennessee's got a couple more games left. Yes, they can't just crap the bed. Yeah, you need to have a pulse in Nashville. I get all that, okay? Grant and I talked about that, on Friday's show. But I asked the question, is it as simple as this? Is it Tennessee, Alabama, right? It's the winner of this game. Do you get a number 1 seed? Might not be as simple as this. However, if you lose this game, boy, it's an uphill climb because this is your best competition remaining. This is your best shot at improving that resume ahead of March, okay? And Tennessee got it done. Tennessee found a way to get it done. Also, how in the world did it find a way to get it done at certain times? This is from Rob Lewis's 4 quick takes over VolQuest.com, and I couldn't agree more. I was editing this, when it went live, and I'm like, ooh, I'm going to use this. If you would have told me before the game that Zakai Ziegler was going to sit for more than half of the first half, the Vols starting bigs were going to be combined for 8 points, Alabama was going to dominate the glass 43-32, and Mark Sears was going to go off for 24 points, I would have thought Tennessee might have gotten beat by 20-plus at home. But it didn't. It didn't. Tennessee found a way. Offense certainly did not put Tennessee in a hole early on. Shot most of the first half, 50%. Respectable 38 points at the break, 38 points in 20 minutes. It did get cold there late in the second half, but the offense, we talked about it, number one key to this game was you cannot get off to an early start or an early hole, if you will. And Tennessee did. Now, Tennessee's defense didn't necessarily play up to its standard in the first half. Granted, Alabama's got the number 1 offense in the country, right? They did shoot 54% in the first half, 42-38 halftime lead. Alabama did help Tennessee out tremendously in the first half, going 8 of 15 at the free throw line in the first half. Nonetheless, Tennessee found a way, right? I mean, Tennessee put the clamps on there towards the end. Jordan Gainey had, 9 points in the second half. Jemai Mashek made every play imaginable there in the last 30 to 45 seconds of this game. Awesome stuff. Oh, yeah, and with this win, Rick Barnes becomes the active winningest head coach in college basketball. How about that? And, congratulations to Rick Barnes on that accomplishment. That is pretty cool. All right, when we come back, I'm going to tell you why. One of the reasons I love sports. I love sports because of moments that happened on Saturday. Jemai Mashek is the hero when he's been the GOAT for so many different Tennessee fans over the course of the last couple of years.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. Tonight's NBA slate includes 2 embattled franchises just trying to pick up the pieces after the trade deadline. The Kings and the Mavs face off. The Mavs, slight favorites, laying 1.5 according to FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
The Illini on a 2-game winning streak with one left against Purdue. At the end of the season, Illini getting hot.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Illinois with a 20-point victory over the Michigan Wolverines at Ann Arbor. That's right, that's 9 straight wins against the Michigan Wolverines. Life is good right now, and I wanted to bring someone else on to kind of not just talk about the game, but in the postgame, I kind of took a step back, and I wanted to, the season was reeling after that Duke game. A lot of hope was being lost. I called the team broken. That's right. I, myself, the host of this show, called the team potentially broken, and then the team was not broken. All of a sudden, they've kind of had a resurgence as of late. And to me, a lot of that has to do with the transfer class that Brad Underwood has brought in. And I want to kind of give them a little credit here and Brad Underwood a little credit. But I didn't want to just give my sole focus. So, of course, I'm bringing back JR, friend of the program. JR, thank you again for joining me today.
Glad to be here. I do have a question, though, really fast, if you don't mind.
Let's hear it.
Is Brad Underwood's lucky number 20? Because past 2 games, 20-point wins, baby.
I'll take it. And that's six 20-plus point victories in conference play this year. I mean, it's one of those Illinois games, right, Jared? I mean, you cover the Big Ten in the Big Ten huddle, and Illinois is such a Jekyll and Hyde team that on one night they can look like they can beat anybody in the country. And then the other day, you can have a loss against a team that's battling to stay in the tournament. So, it's just nice for me, I guess for us collectively, who's probably watching the show, that Illinois seems to kind of be righting the ship right at the end of the season. But, JR, I want to, kind of get your feedback on this first, because I wanted to give due a credit where credit is due. All season long, Brad has been applauded, and deservedly so, for the freshman class that he's essentially brought in. Kasparis, Will Riley. I know technically Thomas Lovovicic is not a freshman, but we all know it's his first year playing college ball. And then you have like Morez Johnson, right? You're talking about Morez Johnson being your 4th best freshman in a class. Tells me that you did something really, really special that year in recruiting. But a lot of people feel like where Brad fell short was the transfer portal. Now, again, it's a lot of pressure on Brad when you have to replace 9 guys off of last year's team. And it ended up being 10 guys because he wasn't aware that Ty Rodgers was planning on redshirting opening day. And so there's been a lot of heat on Brad when it comes to his evaluations of Ben Hummerhouse, of Trey White. A lot of these guys had up and down seasons, but it seems like, I guess my ultimate point was, after that Duke game, when the whole season looked like it was going down the drain, I talked all season long that we know the freshmen are talented, but sometimes in the locker room, you just need culture guys. You need those vets who have been there before to kind of stabilize the ship and say, hey, look, to the young guys, like, hey, we can fix this. And to me, Kylan Boswell, Trey White, and Ben Hummerhouse have done a fantastic job of that, and are a big reason that Illinois kind of turned their season around. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Trey White, obviously, what was it, that Michigan State game where he played, 4 minutes or something like that? I mean, I know that was probably some of the sickness and stuff like that Brad Underwood was talking about that was going around that held him back from that. But you see what having Trey White in this lineup does for this team. I know a lot of people regard him as not the best 3-point shooter, and I get that. But, I mean, in this game, he went 3 for 4 from behind the arc. So, I mean, if they're going to leave him open, he's going to take it. And that is really what this team is reeling on right now, is the spacing. And for them to be able to shoot threes and to be a threat from the 3-point line, other teams have to try to defend that. And then you have guys like Kylan Boswell, Kasparis Chaconis, I mean, a number of guys that are able to get into the inside the arc and make things happen. I do think, though, that one area where these 3 guys in particular are making the biggest difference. There's other transfers on the team as well, but these 3 guys in particular is making the biggest difference is just on defense. I mean, Sonny, there were 3 blocks in this game, all by Kylan Boswell and Trey White. There were 4 steals in this game, all by Colin Boswell, Trey White, and Ben Hummerkaus. I mean, this is a part of Illinois this season that, I mean, they've played good defense. They've had good defensive ratings, but they've not really had the production in some of those areas. And so if you're going to get 4 steals a game, from these 3 guys alone, maybe you start getting some more from Tomislav Visic. Maybe you get some more from Gibbs Lawhorn or something like that. Maybe you get some more from someplace else. But if these guys can give you that, they're going to be able to lead that defensive effort, at least from the numbers standpoint, and then with blocks as well. Tomislav Visic needs to probably get a few more blocks and be down there, but for the most part, this seems to be the way Brad Underwood wanted this team to roll these past 2 games, and they'll look like one of the most dangerous teams in the country if they are.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of pressure off a guy like Kasparis or Will Riley to be that star when you have a supporting cast play the way that they just did. I mean, just for an example, okay, Duke was 3 games ago. In the last 2 games, Kylan Boswell had 15, 7, and 4 against Iowa. And then, of course, he just had 17, 9 rebounds, and 4 assists against Michigan. Let's go to Trey White. Against Iowa, he had 14 points, 2 rebounds. And against Michigan, he had 19 points and 11 rebounds. And you brought this up. In the last 2 games, Trey White is 5 for 8 from 3-point land. And, that's kind of been a deficiency of his game. And what I think is kind of one of the main reasons he was essentially in the doghouse for a while, because his style of play is just not something that fits with the offense. But I've been screaming out loud on the show that Trey White is a good college basketball player. And Illinois, look, we thought they were a really deep team when it comes to the depth on the roster. It turns out it's not as deep as we thought it was going to be. And so we're not in any sort of business or place to not play a player who is a good college basketball player. The other guy I want to give credit to is one that you and I, let's be honest, have hated on, a big part of this season for honestly deserved reasons. But he's turned things around. I think a lot of that has to do with him accepting a role. I mean, against Iowa, he only played 14 minutes. Against Michigan, he played 24 minutes. And sure, the box score doesn't jump out at you. 9 points, 5 rebounds against Michigan, 6 points, 3 rebounds against Iowa, but he's 5 for 10. 5 for 10 from 3-point land, and it's not even that. If you're watching Ben Hummerkaus over the last couple of games, he's doing all the little dirty jobs that you want your role players to do, and it's just I think he's as relieved as anybody to get the light no longer shining on him and letting him just go out there, play basketball, shoot the wide open 3-pointer when it's there. He had some of the most key rebounds, including offensive rebounds against Michigan on Sunday. I think, again, if the other role players hadn't had such a good game, we'd all be talking about how solid of a game Ben Hummerkaus had. And, those are the 3 guys. You're talking about a lot of experience between those 3 guys that you're looking to carry a young team like this. And right now, at the end of the season, when we kind of need them most, they are.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Ben Hummerkaus, like you pointed out, like his numbers don't jump out at you like Kylan Boswell and Trey White's do. And I mean no disrespect at all to Trey White and Kylan Boswell by saying this, but Ben Hummerkaus was the most important transfer out of those 3 in this game because he was able to come in and play the 5 spot for you when Tomislav Visic was in foul trouble. That's a 5 spot that was going against one of the best big men in the country in Vlad Golden, and a 5 spot that would have had either Will Cheddar or Danny Wolf coming in for him when he subs out. Ben Hummerkaus held his own, and he spaced the floor, right? He went 3 for 8 in this game shooting from 3. That's not the best, in the world, but still, that's nearly 50%. And he did enough for Vlad and anybody else that was going to be on him to respect him. And so they weren't going to be able to be in the middle of the floor denying guys at the basket. So whether you had Trey White, Colin Boswell, whoever it was, going to the rim, they had more area to operate. Illinois has fantastic, guys who can finish at the rim, but if they don't have to be fantastic and they can just go to the rim, and make a play and not have to shoot around a 7-footer, you see how effective it is. And I can't say enough good things about what Ben Hummerkaus did as a supporting player in this game. Is he your third option? Is he your second option? Is he your first option scoring? No. Is he your best defender on the team? No. Like, he is not those things. But what he is he's a guy who was able to come in, fill a role, fill it well enough that the other team had to respect him. And just that, based off of that respect alone, it gave the other guys opportunities to make plays.
And just to wrap it up, I also wanted to just, we were talking about the best defensive player on this team. I want to go back to Colin Boswell again, who started off the season amazing when it comes to defensive basketball. And even as of late, even against Duke, where he had the large responsibility of playing against Cooper Flagg, a player who's going to be the number one pick in the draft, a potential generational NBA basketball player, more than held his own. And somehow on Sunday, Kylan was tasked to guard Danny Wolf, a guy 8 inches taller than him, and he held his own there. I've said it in the beginning of the season that I've kind of, in a lot of ways, been looking forward to the last game of the season, because I really think that Kylan Boswell versus Braden Smith matchup this year, I mean, Braden, let's be honest, let's be humble for a second. Braden has had the Illini number the last couple seasons, but I'm really looking forward to seeing this matchup with Kylan going up against Braden, just because of his flexibility. You know, as I just talked about, he was guarding Danny Wolf on Sunday. They're 7 foot tall. And then on the very next game on Friday, he's going to be tasked on guarding Braden Smith, arguably the best point guard in the country. And like versatility like that, it's just hard to find in America.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I was talking about it on my show. For a guy who's 6'2", to go up against a 7-footer. Now, granted, Danny Wolf has not been playing like a 7-footer, and he needs to be far more aggressive. He needs to be far more physical. He needs to get down in the block and get in the paint more. But he could have done that this game, right? He could have fixed that, but Colin Boswell didn't let him do that. Colin Boswell got physical with him, and Colin Boswell got up in his grill, made him uncomfortable, and really, Danny Wolf was pretty ineffective in this game. Now, I don't know what that says about him as a player, that he's had a couple games like that recently, but as far as I'm concerned, Danny Wolf is one of the best players in the Big Ten. And Kylan Boswell, however many inches away it is, you shut down one of the best players in the Big Ten. Bravo. Hats off to you. Just, it speaks to one more aspect of these three players that we're talking about that is just one of the key cogs and why this Illinois team can be as good as maybe some thought they could be early on in the season.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. Tonight's NBA slate includes 2 embattled franchises just trying to pick up the pieces after the trade deadline. The Kings and the Mavs face off. The Mavs, slight favorites, laying 1.5, according to FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Al Horford, Derek White come up big, and I think it's an impressive win. 110-103. The Boston Celtics beat the Denver Nuggets. I think it's an impressive win. Later on, we'll talk about the bench. We'll talk about Jaylen and Jason, Luke Cornett. Al and Derek were huge. I'll get to them in a few minutes. I want to start with this is an impressive win. I think the past 2 games have been really good efforts, right? They didn't beat the Cleveland Cavaliers. They didn't execute down the stretch. I don't think that was a particularly bad loss or anything like that. And I thought this was a good win. They did not have Kristaps Porzingis. Again, they did not have Drew Holiday again. In a minute, I'll give you the Drew Holiday injury update. But the Celtics are missing 2 starters, and we do have to adjust our expectations on how they're going to perform over the course of 48 minutes when you're missing one of your 2 starting guards, an all defensive backcourt player and your unicorn in Kristaps Porzingis, who's still sick. We know what Kristaps does. Against a team like this, you're protecting the rim. The Celtics started Luke Cornett with Al Horford and went with Jaylen, Jason, and Derek White. So they went double big. They maintained double big throughout most of this game. They took away the rim from the Denver Nuggets. They did a great job. The game plan was very clearly to give up three-pointers to Christian Brown, to Russell Westbrook, and they did that, and it worked basically perfectly. Brown hit one big three-pointer from the corner late in the game, so that was timely, but he was, 2 of 8, and Russell, 2 of 8 from 3. Russell Westbrook was also 2 of 8 from 3, so they wanted to give up those shots, and it worked. Now, the Nuggets didn't shoot particularly great from 3 overall, but the Celtics' game plan was pack the paint, don't let Jokic kill you. And Jokic had overall numbers, 20 points, 14 rebounds, 9 assists is like, wow, that's generally a pretty good game, but that's not MVP Jokic numbers. So they did a great job limiting him. Even without Porzingis, it would have been great to have Holiday on Jamal Murray, who got going in the third quarter and in the fourth quarter and helped cut a 20-point lead down to as little as 3. Very similar flow to this game where the Celtics went up. It wasn't like the 25-3 opening, but the Celtics did open up a 20-point lead. They did give that up a little bit in the first half. They did push it back out in the beginning of the third quarter and lose almost all of it heading into the fourth. And the difference is that the Nuggets never really made a push, never could make a push to take the lead. They got it down to as little as 3, and the Celtics were able to hold them off. But my number one overarching 30,000-foot view is without their starting center, without their starting guard, the Celtics forced to dig deep into their bench, and they gave, Torrey Craig got minutes, Nemish Queta got minutes, and Craig was okay. Queta was pretty good despite some foul trouble. They had to go deep into their bench, guys that probably won't play, or at least wouldn't play the minutes that they played in a playoff series. They went up against the number 1 seed in the East and kind of ran out of gas at the end. They went up against a former champion and a team that's competing to try to come out of the West and has a potential MVP, 3-time MVP, like million-time MVP, and Jokic, and they're out there holding their own and executing and not giving up the entirety of their lead. That matters to me, and I'm sorry, we have to adjust our expectations a little bit. Any NBA team missing its 2 of their starters, which inherently means 2 of their 5 best players, is going to have pockets of games where they struggle. And still, the Celtics had very correctable things that they could have done. Number 1, turnovers. They gave up a ton of turnovers. And what did they have here? It was 14 turnovers for the Celtics. But Denver scored a ton off of those turnovers. And if the Celtics just protected the ball a little bit better, then they wouldn't have given up the lead. If the Celtics had made some shots, and this is, Jaylen, let me get to Jaylen here real quick with the knee. He was short he was 0 for 5 in the fourth quarter. He was short in all of those. He said his knee's bothering him. Walked into the locker room after the game. He's got a big wrap on his right knee, something that's been bothering him. I think the Celtics should probably rest him a little bit. 2 days off before the next game. So either way, correctable things that don't usually happen under normal circumstances. A couple of those shots fall, you protect the ball a little bit better, and that lead doesn't get as shrunk by, this horrible English, but doesn't get eaten into as much by the Denver Nuggets. So that's my number 1 overarching take. Now, no Drew Holiday. Let's finish this segment by just giving you this update. He did speak a little bit before the game. He said, first of all, it's a mallet finger, which it's like a tear, which causes the finger to like drop somehow. It's kind of weird. I try to have the medical staff explain it to me, and it's basically like a tear or a break that just causes the finger to just drop. And you got to keep it in a splint to keep it straight. And Holiday said, I'm going to be in a splint for a minute because you got to keep it as straight for as long as you can. It's going to be treated like a broken finger, and it takes time to heal. It takes a few weeks to heal at the very least. So now the question is, while it's healing, can he play? So I'm not saying he's going to be out for a few weeks, but I don't know how long he's going to be out. No one knows how long he's going to be out right now. Some of it's a pain tolerance thing, and he hasn't even been able to catch a basketball while dealing with this. So there is a period here where he's going to be out. So it's not going to be like, oh, let's see if he plays against Portland. I would be surprised if he does. He might be out for an extended period of time, but there's still no prognosis. There's no official 1 week, 2 week, 2 days, whatever it is. But he made it seem like it's going to take a little bit of time. It's a little bit up in the air because he has never dealt with something like this before. And it's going to be an ongoing kind of thing where he has to figure out the course of actions. So for now, that's the update, which is kind of like an update, non-update, but it's he spoke. He was talking to the medical staff. He had like a big wrap on the pinky, trying to figure out like, is this the way to go? Is it too sticky on the ball? Would normal athletic tape do the trick? Like they're still figuring out a lot of this. So as he figures this out, we'll see how it goes. So for now, he's going to be out. Expect him to be out for a little while.